Hey, Gary, remember that merchandise survey we talked about last week?
Oh, I had it back in the day.
Oh, yes.
I remember it fondly.
In the foggy days of yore. Well, that is still happening.
Oh, shit.
Oh!
Look out!
Sneak attack.
We are still doing a merchandise survey, and this is the last episode to come out. Mm-hmm. And many of you have replied to it, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But getting the largest sample size possible is going to allow us to merchandise accurately.
So that is tremendous help to us to make good decisions about how to get you shirts and stuff, and your data has been incredibly valuable, as is the feedback. It is a short little 10-question survey, and by filling it out, you get a chance to win one of 8 Steam games that we're passing out.
Yeah, random ass games that you may or may not already have. Hopefully you don't. So what is that URL, Cole?
That URL is duckfeed.tv/merch survey 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a 3-dimensional favorite.
Yes, it is the ancestor or the descendant of an ancient spirit.
Yes, it's an ancient favorite.
Yes, an ancient 3-dimensional spirit.
Cast-aged.
Yes. Yes. And this week we are talking about 3D Game Heroes, which is a game that was developed by Silicon Software, or Silicon, there we go, and published by From Software in Japan and Atlas here in America.
Yeah, and this is part of our Influences and Followers kind of interstitial season before we hop on the Bloodfoot and do the Born thing, which we're all looking forward to with heavy anticipation.
Yes.
So this is a game that uses voxels to create these kind of 3D approximations of what sprites would look like, and not, like old sprites, like Nintendo sprites.
Yeah. And the result is that it is fucking gorgeous.
I think it's one of the best looking games of that generation.
Oh, yeah.
Like it is really, really unique looking. And really, really pretty. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's a real testament to the power of kind of design over graphical power, to say power twice in one sentence on accident. Where it's just choices that make it look so appealing. Like I'm reminded of like what is it, Wind Waker or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, this is not like a graphical powerhouse, but they've made such smart choices that this is going to stand the test of time and look good forever.
Yeah. And there's some pretty sophisticated stuff happening with like post-processing on this in terms of giving things really subtle texture to it. Like the gross detail is really, really spare, right? You're looking at these blocks that are floating in 3D space to make like sculptures of these characters, of like this sprite that you see from this individual angle. But there's all kinds of surface detail happening. There's depth of field a little bit, the cameras at a really steep angle, which you can actually adjust. And just kind of all these filters and stuff happening to make this look like toys almost.
Yeah, that looks like a model town.
Yeah.
Like that you're playing that just animates really well and really beautifully. Yeah. And the reason why they went for this art style is that the gameplay in this game is almost a 100% carbon copy of The Legend of Zelda. And by that we mean the first one.
Right.
And it is a huge love letter homage to that.
To not just Zelda, but like anything adjacent to it. Like this is an 8-bit tribute game.
Yeah, like it most closely hews to Legend of Zelda, but it also, there are notes of Dragon Warrior.
Yeah, there's like aesthetic cues from that. Your hero kind of looks like the main character from Dragon Warrior 1.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it is a huge love letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's all kinds of in-jokes and stuff like that, like in a way that, whereas I would have gotten tired of that in like Retro City Rampage, it feels a little bit less crass here. I don't know why.
Yeah, probably because it's less crass.
Yes.
Like it is very like kind of innocent and loving in a way that is really appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is, you're going into dungeons, you are exploring this overworld map. There's a certain level of nonlinearity, and I actually have there are a lot of notes of, let's say, Link's Awakening in this too, with all the FedEx quests and stuff that you have to do.
Oh, sure.
Like, and all the kind of like the emphasis on NPC townfolk kind of things that you're going to find out in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of the big change, the gimmick in the combat here is instead of, when you're at full health, all your hearts, or I'm sorry, apples, all of your apples. Instead of just shooting beams, you actually have a sword that gets massive and spans like pretty much the entire screen. And you can, adjust this and you can upgrade it and enhance it. And you have multiple different swords you can use.
Yeah, and enhancement paths kind of for the sword. It's not as robust as a Souls game,
right.
But it is. There are a lot of different options for that, and even the starter sword goes halfway across the screen
right.
at full health, and then later on you can just make it unreasonable, which is hugely empowering and really fun.
Yeah.
You can also use a sprite editor to make a custom character, which is super fun. You can also be a skeleton.
Yeah.
Which is also real cute. And I messed around with this a little bit, trying to make, because I was kind of disappointed there wasn't a direct Souls homage character in the presets, because there are homages to other From games. But and I messed around a little bit trying to make a little Solaire, but it was difficult and I stopped.
Right.
But it was really fun. It's a skill set I don't have.
Yeah, it definitely requires a certain amount of spatial awareness that I don't have. Like you can make something look good on one axis, but like the stuff that's designed in there is really novel. One of my favorites is the cloud of people fighting.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
And then there's Santa and Funk Santa.
Yep.
Which I appreciate. And sometimes it's just a car. And then in Element, it's something that's kind of a little bit insensitive. There's a little guy in a wheelchair that's just called Wheels.
That's an homage to the Burger King Kids Club.
Yeah. And it says under it, even if you're handicapped, you can be a hero or something like that, which is a little bit like, no. But
you can there's a possible reading of that where they're trying to be inclusive,
yeah,
just in a very like misguided Michael Scott kind of way.
Yes, yeah, it does feel a little bit like Michael Scott. And regardless of what your character looks like, your verb set is always going to be the same. You're going to use the same items, but you have these different sprites, and some of them are really creative. Like you can be a shark, where you're underwater, like you are just a fin until you attack.
Yep,
which is really, really adorable, and just all kinds of things. There's a really nice looking beholder. So that part, that's real fun.
Yeah, and you can change it at will too.
Yeah. And there are different genders you can have for your character. So there's a lot of effort to kind of have gender neutral pronouns in the game. And there are different classes, which are subtly different. And that's the main thing you want to look for when you're choosing your character there, is that the hero is the combat class, the scholar is the magic class, and the royal, and a little bit of a nod to Demon Souls, is the middle ground class.
Yeah. So Gary, why are we talking about this game?
It's a good question. The 100% honest answer, I think, is that we learned that this was developed by Silicon Studios a little bit late after we decided to do it. So that's part of it. However, this game is of interest to Souls fans, even though it was only published by From. One of the big reasons, I think, is the lineage. So we talked a lot about, and people talked about, how the Souls games are like 3D Castlevanias. And that kind of plays down to the mechanics of it, like the kind of the paced gameplay and combat and the difficulty. But not a lot of people talked about how much the Souls games owe to the first two Zelda games. Because in Zelda 1, when you burn a random bush to find a cave where a guy will give you money, that's Souls as shit. That kind of open-endedness, lack of tutorial, hidden things behind every corner and nook is one of my favorite things about Souls games, and that's something that this game apes directly from the early Zelda games as well.
I would even go so far as to say, as especially Zelda 1, before there was really any dialogue outside of the old men in caves, Zelda 1 kind of has a sense of like melancholy isolation to it.
Yeah. Like you against the world, which is like something that the Souls games do really, really well.
Right. There's also some direct From DNA in this, like aside from the default main character being called From, spelled with a U. There's just all kinds of like homages in. There's a whole cave like where the From developers live that you can talk to. You can get like Demon Souls references, like white sticky goo is a thing.
Yeah, you get white sticky stuff, and they're kind of everywhere. There's like lots of little, one of the, you find a dead hero at the beginning of every dungeon, and one of them says "My heart is breaking" and stuff like that. There's tons of little Demon Souls drops, and that was the only Souls game that had been out at this point. But there are also Armored Core references and things like that. So it's full of Easter egg hunting for the Souls fan, which is really fun.
Yeah.
I also think another thing it has in common with it is the difficulty. So difficulty is a hallmark of the Souls games, and it is here where there's kind of like the later dungeons get very hard. Like this is a pretty hard game, and you get to kind of see that even though From didn't necessarily do it, this is something where you kind of apply like a Souls-like difficulty to a Zelda game and see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
And like in some ways, I feel like it's super successful. In some ways, I feel like it's less so. But this is kind of an exercise in, maybe not quite as difficult a difficulty curve, but there are a lot of kind of similarities in that part as well.
Yeah, it is kind of like a modern ethos applied to it with the difficulty and, just kind of like with the Souls games being where action RPGs kind of ended up. This is, kind of a weird parallel evolution.
Right, applying modern sensibilities to where action RPGs started.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the plot, Cole.
Yeah, so the Kingdom of Dodnia. I love how they work the graphics into the story.
They're everywhere.
Yep. It used to be 2D, but the king thought it was a little bit outdated, so he updated it to 3D. It's kind of like how, your drapes are out of season, like floral print. What am I, a grandma?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And all these townspeople are talking about how hard it is to make the transition.
Yeah.
But as it was once before, the kingdom is now in peril after the Dark Bishop Fuel. Yeah, Fuel.
Yeah, I always said Fuel, but I don't know.
Yeah. He steals the 6 magical orbs that maintain the peace in the kingdom, and now it's up to the hero, who is the descendant of another great hero, to gather the orbs and defeat Fuel and the Dark King Onyx. Stop me if you've heard this one before.
Yes.
The plot is super fluffy.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like the unique things are in the margins of this game, like the little bits of dialogue and the nods. Like, yeah, the personality. Like, so that's where, it escapes being like a boring kind of retread and starts becoming pretty cute and charming. So there's an opening kind of cinematic when you start the game where you learn about the people kind of losing interest in the 2D worlds. Making the transition to 3D makes I feel like it would hurt. Like, I don't know if that's just me and like my specific body horror issues, but like it seems like it would hurt.
Well, I mean, like, all we have to do, it's almost the 2D to 3D version of Slaughterhouse 5's 3D to 4D.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who knows if there are any physical changes that come with that, but like, I would worry more about losing my mind.
Yeah, because I mean, all of a sudden there are things behind things.
Yeah.
And that's all of a sudden you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a late era Futurama episode that was like that, where they went to Flatland, or they were compressed down to the second dimension, and they discovered, we can't actually eat because our 3D digestive system rendered in 2D would actually cut us in half.
Oh,
because of this flesh tube that runs down the middle of us.
Yeah.
So they had to escape because they couldn't eat.
That's terrifying. That's a good Futurama.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
Futurama.
it's a good premise for a Futurama.
Yes. Yeah. But this awesome little tapestry that kind of like sets up this story. And again, in a way that is really reminiscent to the way that Zelda happens. And you start out in this playable flashback to the great hero having saved the day and deciding to go hide his ancient sword away. And it is always at full charge. I thought that's what this game was going to be, and I really freaked out. I didn't know that was the gimmick. So I'm like, what in the hell is that sword doing? Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird mixed blessing that it's not at full charge most of the time, because it gives the game a weird kind of slippery slope in difficulty. So like when you start failing, you're more likely to fail at things, because you are at your most powerful as soon as you start an encounter, and then get less powerful as the encounter goes on, as opposed to vice versa.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Like, it took me a little while to really grow to appreciate that part of it. And then in the end, I think I kind of do, especially in the last dungeon, which we'll talk about, where you end up fighting a lot of the same enemies again, and being able to first try, no hit a couple of them, because I was better with my sword and could have it at max power as I go.
It's far more empowering to have a gigantic sword than it is to be able to shoot swords like you did in Zelda 1.
Yeah, and you can still shoot little
Right.
things if you want. You get this choice from the king, right? And it's another little meme thing that, again, like if this were the only thing in there, if it wasn't such an obvious Zelda thing, it would be obnoxious. Like the king saying it's dangerous to go alone, which obviously is Zelda 1 meme. Like if this happened in Borderlands, I would not care for it. Like and I guarantee that I haven't played it, but like, and maybe you have. That happens in Borderlands, right? Someone says it's dangerous to go alone and gives you a gun.
Probably.
Like
I
that
don't know.
has to happen. Like that's what that series is made of.
I played the first 20 minutes of Borderlands too. So
Yeah.
Well,
I'm surprised it didn't happen in the first 20 minutes. I'm sure it happens in one of the DLCs or something like that, because fuck those games. But I guarantee that happens, and that's obnoxious. But this is cute. It's cute when I do it.
Exactly.
It's cute when I like it.
It's cute when my kid does it. That's the more accurate thing, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's throwing his food all over the place at the restaurant. He's spouting memes. He's a walking Hot Topic shirt. Okay.
It's because it's not just a meme, because it works within the context of the game, I think.
Right. Yeah. It is perceived as loving instead of being like mercenary.
Yeah, it's not cynical. There's no cynicism in this game.
No. People tried to ascribe a lot of cynicism to this when it came out. I think that was one of the reasons I never really checked it out. That, and I didn't own a PS3 until 2011. So, and this had kind of fallen out of favor. So while we still have anybody who is listening to this, I hope that, who hasn't played it, I hope that this actually gets you to go out and try it. I left this out of the intro, but as you kind of drop off waiting for other things, I really encourage you to check this out, specifically because of the play and also that personality. Because I didn't give it a chance, and I feel bad almost entirely because of that perceived cynicism around it.
Yeah, and also one of the things, and we've harped on this before and we'll harp on it again, is visually the game works so much better in motion than it does in screenshots.
Oh, for sure.
Like seeing it, when this game came out, I was hyped for it, and it was one of the first like PS3 exclusives I wanted, and I probably got a PS3 later than you did, so I didn't play it until then. But I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, like that looks neat. But seeing it in motion really makes a huge difference. Yeah. Like it no longer looks like this like little crafted model, and you're playing the model, and it's super cool.
But you retrace your ancestors' steps, and you get into your first boss fight with this Stompy statue.
Yep, which is pretty standard. The statue jumps up and lands, and you have to hit it and avoid getting under it. There's not too much to it.
You don't get to really unique fights until much later.
Yeah, and then they're pretty good. Like I, in general, like the boss fights in this game. And you get your Navi figure, Lee the fairy, and but like significantly less obnoxious than Navi.
Right.
Like Lee only talks to you when there's something actually important. So
mostly at the beginning and end of a dungeon.
Yep.
Yeah. So it isn't stopping you as you walk into a new room saying, "Hey, look at this." Look
at the switch you have to press. Like it does that the first time, and then once what a switch looks like in this game, it trusts you to have more memory than a fish.
Right.
And like lets you continue on.
Yeah.
And then the game kind of just opens up. Like you have the first dungeon you need to go to. You know more or less how to get there, but you can explore a lot of this world right out the bat in Zelda fashion. And there are significant kind of benefits to doing so. Like I didn't go out, and when I play Zelda games, I never go out and get all the heart container pieces. But you could probably level up your health a few times just right out the gate. Yeah, if you want to.
There are only like 2 or 3 gear gates you really have to contend with.
Yeah. There's only a couple pieces of gear that function in true Metroidvania fashion and like open up other areas. But like if you want, go explore, find some caves and stuff. Like it's supposed to evoke that kind of openness. Yeah. And I really appreciate that. And the theme music really backs it up. Like the theme music is really heroic and like sounds pretty good.
Is a sound alike of the overworld theme? Of
yes.
Zelda? Yep.
Yeah.
Going after and getting these life shards, which again I love that your life is apples in this, just because that feels like such a knockoff, in a good way, right? It's endearing, because this game is so much more difficult. Actually, investing that time will pay dividends in a way that doing it in a Zelda game would not. Yeah, you actually have to take kind of advantage of some of these things a little bit more. And later in the game, when I ran into some difficulty walls, it was because I realized I'd been playing it like a Zelda game where I don't have to do that. Like me and Cole both recently came off of Link Between Worlds, which is not a difficult game. Right.
Like it's an amazing game, but it's not hard.
Yeah.
And this one, you have to press those advantages that you have similar to a Souls game.
Mm-hmm. I played Link Between Worlds after I beat this, and
interesting.
it is a testament to this that I was immediately like, oh, I need more of these kind of games. So I went and beat this game that I owned but hadn't beaten yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this opens up. You have your own little your own little village here, Rayjack, which is where you're kind of introduced to these annoyingly time-sensitive side quests.
Yeah, I didn't do tons of these.
Yeah,
I did some of them, and some of they're time sensitive in different ways. I think that the only way that I know of, and you could, if you did more of them, you could correct me on this.
I did.
Is that you have to? Okay, so yeah, if you did all of them, because I certainly didn't. And in full disclosure, like I got myself under the gun a little bit with bad time management and ended up having to kind of rush through this. Like I completed it, but I didn't completionist it. So I think that most of our time, like you just have to finish them before you finish a dungeon.
Yeah.
Are there any of them that are timed, like they specifically have a clock?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. That's good.
So that's a good thing. What I did was I just got a big list of time sensitive quests and where they started and when you needed to do them by.
Mm-hmm.
And so that functioned well for me. Like there's a great guide on GameFAQs that lists everything in between the dungeons, and it's very spoiler free.
Yeah, that is a great guide. It's the only guide on GameFAQs too.
Oh,
but it's HTML and I think it's the only guide on GameFAQs. But yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah. So I just I looked at the interstitial stuff of that, and that has been very useful. Not so much because I'm like really stoked about getting the moon sword, although I got the moon sword. That's neat.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get as much of that flavor text as I could.
Yeah.
For the purpose of talking about it on the show. So like, it's pretty funny that in the village, there's a slime who wants to be a human. Then throughout the course of the game, he turns into a human and you turn him back with a mirror at the end of the game.
Yes. So, like there's tons of stuff like that you can find like that. That are just like these little things in the corners that are references. Like the characters, unlike villagers in say a Zelda game or Zelda 2, like they actually, for the most part, will have something worth listening to say. Like talking to everybody will actually work out mechanically and flavor wise.
Yeah.
For you. You can get the dash boots from this village, which is a good idea.
It's a good idea. However, they're functionally useless if you're not using it in the right circumstances, because you dash with your sword out, and if your sword is at max charge, you will only get a third of the way across the screen before you run into a wall.
If it's a max charge, but when you can, that's when eventually we should talk about the upgrade system for swords, and this, we can do that now.
Yeah, you
can. So one of the things you can buy for your sword is Pierce. The Pierce quality, which makes it pass through inanimate objects. And that was always the first thing I bought, no matter what, which then allows you to swing, shoot through walls and dash and do all kinds of shit.
That's probably why just at a certain point, the swords that I picked up just had that.
Yeah.
Like I was really frustrated by that. I never knew what the Pierce function did.
Yeah, so. It's my MVP upgrade of the game was Pierce, like just because it allowed me to function with my sword at max value. You can also increase length, width, damage, beam, which allows your sword to shoot. It does things, and then special if the sword has a special quality. And there are tons of swords in this game, many of which are not actually swords.
One of which is a fish.
One of which is a fish. One of which is a baseball bat. And if some of them will do kind of neat things, and if you level those up, it'll do them better. It needs to be noted though that they only have these properties when you're at max health.
Right.
So if you get a really good sword, or if you get a kind of lousy sword and you power it up, it's for a lot of the game, you're not going to have that power. So there's a weird element of like sunk cost in the upgrade system where like I end up finding a sword, maybe a third through the game, upgrading it a lot, and then finding a better sword not too long afterwards. Excuse me, and it was just out of luck.
Yeah,
with that money I invested. Because
of that fear, I actually just ended up not upgrading my swords that much.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just kind of let them be and didn't take advantage of that.
Well, part of me was thinking of it in terms of like, again, applying other games to this game, which was a mistake, was one, applying Zelda to it, thinking there will definitely be a point in this game where money is no object, which didn't happen for me. Like I was always scrimping. And then two, applying Souls logic to it where like, yes, you don't want to like get a +5 set of leather armor in Souls, but you do want like a +3 set, like those early upgrade materials and early upgrade paths are totally worth it. Here, not so much. Like I think the way that you did it is probably a better way to do it.
Yeah.
I would still buy Pierce just so you can dash around.
Function. Yeah.
Yeah, just so you can function. But and it's so useful for dungeons where you can stab through walls. But the other than Pierce, like it's probably not worth upgrading your attack or length or width or anything until you find a sword you're gonna ride with.
Right. Yeah. And you also have a shield too. Just kind of moving on from that you also buy from the blacksmith. And this has a block function, although it is not, I don't think, as useful as it is in Zelda. I don't think it's weird that you have to do it manually. It's
weird, but once I got used to it, it became really key.
Right.
For me, because
I treat it like a Souls game. I just always had it up by default.
Yeah, and one, it stops you from rotating, so you can strafe with it, which is really useful. Two, the way that enemies are placed in overworld and dungeon rooms is really interesting in this game, in that it's like seemingly random, and you have a random chance of encountering a really, really tough enemy. Like there's kind of two different kinds of champion enemies, like one that are unique to the overworld, or two sets, and then ones that just have little crowns on them. And if you walk into a room and there's one of the crown ones that move really fast, he's right in front of you, you want to walk into a room with your shield up in case he rushes you.
Right.
So again, that Souls thing, to it. And the way shields are upgraded is like a really lengthy FedEx quest that takes place over the second half of the game, and is worth doing.
Oh yeah, because that it is crucial for the final boss.
Yes.
Yeah. I desperately want two kinds of video game hats. One, a plumb bob from The Sims. The second, I love that crown on the elite enemies.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's super cute.
It's so cute.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. Especially since the enemies are cute anyway. Like you come into a room and there's a rabbit with a little crown that's like angrier than the other rabbits. Like that's great.
King Scorpion. Yeah.
Yep.
The Scorpion exactly. King by Rock. Right.
Yeah, excellent.
There we go.
I told you about my Scorpion Nature's All-Star shirt, right?
No.
A long time ago on the internet, my friend found this website, and I'll put it in the show notes. I can't remember it now. But it had a t-shirt and in a baseball logo, it said Scorpion, Nature's All-Star. And then I was talking about on Twitter about how I wanted it. And then that friend found it again.
Oh.
So I bought it, and I have a shirt that's like this really, really attractive shade of olive that in baseball things says Scorpion, Nature's All-Star, in baseball font. No, that's it. That's the end of the story. But you can also get 100% Scorpion certified. There's a bunch of different and you can choose whatever animal you want. It's just this weird fly-by-night company that makes these very weird, any animal, just Nature's All-Star is a very funny way to put it for me.
Yeah.
To me.
I think I know what that site is. It's like Udaku's or something like that.
That doesn't sound right, but it could.
No, it's a similar one that has a mix and match design kind of thing.
Yeah. This one's it's 100% blank certified or blank Nature's All-Star, and you can only put in animals. So it's pretty specific.
Yeah. Nature's Crown Royal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You also talk to a guy here in the inn who talks about how now that the world is in 3D, they're ready for his magnum opus, a 3D mecha game.
Yep.
And this is the aforementioned From developer, who then goes off and starts a studio in a cave.
Yeah. No, which would be a cool way. There's multiple studios in caves.
Yep.
In this game. That's where game studios end up. You're essentially making your way to, there are mini games and stuff you can't quite do yet. Yeah. Because you're making your way to the grass temple, which is the Green Hill Zone of this game. This is a super simple little temple that more or less is there to teach you about switches, which you should know how they work, but and it kind of belies, there are only 6 temples in this game, or 7 rather, and you might think that's not very many compared to Zelda's 8 and the game being kind of shorter, and this one kind of belies a simpler temple structure, but that's really where the meat of these games is, and the temples are, after this, get kind of long and arduous.
Right.
In a good way, they become really kind of difficult, but this one is super easy.
Yeah. And when we say these are Zelda dungeons, it is Zelda dungeons. You are looking down into these rooms that are composed with squares, and each little room is a challenge unto itself.
Yes. Yeah, you literally, it'll just be a little puzzle or a little enemy, or most times both. And the perspective, which you can change in the overworld to a couple of different things, gets into a forced top-down perspective in dungeons. So it really is Zeldaing out.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard to talk about specifics inside these things other than to kind of give an overriding theme, just because. And then I move the block onto the button, and it right, like it can't be that level of detail for this. But this is really just kind of getting you up to speed on how to navigate these things, and then also teaching you how to use the boomerang, which, just like in Zelda, I forget that I have.
Yeah, it actually ends up being super useful for one of the bosses.
Oh yeah.
Later in kind of a weird way, like it comes back. There are also like maps and big keys, like the unboss key that you can get, and it's exactly like Zelda,
right?
So, and lots of little small keys.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you're doing in these dungeons is going around finding small keys and bombable walls to make progress towards this end goal.
Yeah, and this is definitely a link to the past Zelda ethos, insofar as even though each dungeon kind of has its own special item that it can get you, it's not necessarily required to proceed, at least not all of them, right? Like, it's not a temple built around the boomerang. There just may or may not be some switches that are easier to hit with it.
Yeah, and the bosses are not built around the weapon. There's a disconnect, which again is not, like, that's something that later Zeldas do well, and then eventually to the point of rote, grotesqueness. But it is something that, like, it kind of it takes that cue directly from Zelda 1, where it's more like you have a toolbox and you can choose how to approach it. So the first boss here is Elagon. And
I say Elagon.
Oh, Elagon?
Yeah, because he's an eel dragon.
Oh, I was thinking like a polygon.
Oh,
like Elagon.
Weird.
Yeah,
they both work.
Huh. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he's like Snake. Like, he's like the classic computer game Snake.
Capricola. He's a snake. He's like there's a very similar Zelda boss, I think, in Link's Awakening, where you have to attack the tail. However, in this one, it's pretty cool. As he gets shorter, he gets faster.
Yes. Yeah, so his tail part is the part of him that's vulnerable, and if you attack, that explodes. And big, beautiful particle, pixel explosions.
Yeah.
I love how utilitarian the boss arenas are in this game.
Just big boxes.
Yeah, it's usually just big boxes. Like, the outside games get kind of pretty, and the scenery looks good, and the dungeons are so functional that I could also see that being a turnoff for some people when this came out. But I'm pretty into it. Like, it kind of strips all the metaphor away from what you're doing.
Yeah. This might be like a really douchey way to say this, but it almost feels like updating Zelda 1 for people who grew up with Zelda 1.
Yeah.
That's almost exactly what they're doing. Like, somebody who appreciated what the first Zelda did enough to not need the fluff outside of, just the obvious eye candy that's already here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elagon or Elagon is pretty easy. As you go through, and after you beat him, you get your apple up, as per usual, and you meet the sage. There's 6 sages associated with the 6 orbs that each teach you a different kind of magic.
Yeah, and each
shader
of these,
magic.
Yeah, shader magic, which are all based on different kind of graphical principles. So this one is called Parallax, which lets you see things on blank slates,
or reveals hidden things like on the ground and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And this ends up being really useful, even though it does become a little bit of like,
it's obnoxious, actually.
Yeah, it's like it's useful because it's necessary, but it's not. You don't opt into it. It's just a mandatory magic tax.
Yep.
When you get to an area that needs it, it's got that. Yeah, it's a little bit of that like safety bit problem.
Yeah.
That I don't dig.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a bummer. Like, you find some other shader magics that are kind of more useful in a day-to-day kind of thing that feel less gratuitous than that later on. But this is one that you're gonna kind of like lean on in later temples.
Yeah, almost exclusively. All the rest of them have a gameplay function as well.
Yeah, or a combat function, right?
Yeah.
That'd be the one. Something else to say: after you defeat these bosses, you can actually summon them to fight them again.
Yeah, from their tombstone.
Right.
Well, Shades of Dark Souls too.
Yeah.
And you do that because if you beat them without taking a hit, you get an achievement. So that's if you're achievement hunting, that's a reason to do that. Yeah. Even though achievement hunting in this game seems like a real nightmare, because there are a lot of achievements and a lot of little collectibles and items and stuff. So
especially the bestiary, dear God.
Oh, the bestiary, yeah, never in a million years would I do that. Again, the Duckfeed.tv pink tail stratagem. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Play as much of the game as you want. Have fun.
yeah, it's easy.
Go out and have fun, you kids.
Don't grind. But you're told by the sage that your next temple is in the Forest of No Return, aka Lost Woods.
Right. Which again, we are proceeding nicely.
Yes.
Through the usual tropes from that. What's pretty cool is after every individual dungeon, in addition to being able to do extra stuff with the items that you just got, new places and new quest lines kind of open up. Right. Biggest one is that you buy a bow and arrow now, which I think that they kept you from buying it so they could give you the boomerang in here.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't like the way the bow and arrow functions in this. It's neat, but the arc makes it useless to me.
It's only useful for the times when you have to use it and on the next boss.
Right.
Like I like it versus the next boss and then the times where you have to use it, but it's not very fun.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would typically stick to the boomerang and then later the hook shot thing.
If you were trying to damage something from across the screen.
Yeah.
There's some goofy quests. You carry these love letters around to the 6 points of a love hexagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody loves somebody else, and they couldn't be any more interested. It just ends with you throwing the letter away.
Yeah. There are a lot of like little subversions like that too, like in making fun of the effort you're putting in to do these little things, and you get 100 gold or a apple piece just at the end. This guard outside the castle, I love this little bit, who asks you to go rescue. They finally found a Superb Joe.
Yep.
And to go rescue him from Area 6 or what have you. And if you say no, he gives you a game over and then comes back and says, well, that could have been a real game over. You're lucky. Which
letting you off with the warning, punk.
Yeah, that's so good.
I like Superb Joe sounds like a used car dealer from the Balkans.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Superb Joe. Yes. The best deal in town.
It is a Borat joke.
Yes, it is.
But I like just saying it too.
Yeah,
Superb Joe.
Superb Joe.
Superb Joe.
I don't like that the From Cave confirms that sticky white stuff is semen.
Yeah, there's a lot of innuendo in this game.
There is, like even around the sword.
We were talking about it being innocent, but we were lying. No, we weren't lying. Like it gets away with it. It is charming in a way that's not, I don't know, man. I think sticky white stuff was always a little bit cummy.
Oh, is it?
Like
never say the word cummy again. As your spiritual advisor, I have to tell you.
Cummy.
Oh no! If you finish that quatrain, I will be very upset.
We're pod divorcing. Yeah, I will not finish that quatrain. People are already doing it in their head. But yeah, so I always thought that was the innuendo, but this definitely really kind of lays it out there.
Yes, it does. It's in her hair. Ew.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah. Can recommend a message.
Yeah, which is super fun. And is this the cave where there is the person who wants to trade you demon souls? Like there's a lady who's like, this game is too, or like, if this game's too hard for you, I have this other one that's too hard. It's about demons or something like that.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or there's somebody who says, come on, guys, this game isn't that hard.
Yeah.
Which I think he's right.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this is a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah.
There.
Which had to come out of fucking nowhere since From's name isn't on this in America for somebody playing it. Like, man, the Atlas must really, really love this other.
Well, it pops up in the opening when you start the game.
Oh, does it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big From Software thing.
Yeah.
That pops up, but yeah.
Yeah. You head over into the forest. You're fighting a bunch of bees.
Yeah. Yeah. The bees, which are kind of tricky because they're not on the ground
right
a lot of the time. And you're going to your next checkpoint, which is in Wardena's house. And you get to meet the sign master who's been making all the signs around. And if you find them all, he will get the master key, which I didn't end up doing because, again, I didn't complete everything, but would be super useful because the colored key thing is expensive and kind of a pain.
Yeah, a little bit. It puts a gold gate on some certain areas of the game, which are real bad. But there's only like 10 of the signs, and they're not really that hard to find either.
Yeah, I felt like there were more of them because I didn't look at a guide for that part. Yeah. So I just was like, oh man, there's going to be 40 of them.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. If I knew there were only 10, I probably would have done it.
Yeah. I ended up coming across all of them naturally, which was good. They're funny too. Like it's, some don't take any wooden nickels level advice.
Yeah. When I saw them, I'd always read them, but I just didn't go try to collect them all.
Yeah.
You go into the Forest of No Return, which there's a map that you can use Parallax to reveal, and it's essentially it's classic dungeon or classic Zelda Forest. If you take the wrong path through, you start back at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's real simple. It just up, over, down, over, up.
Yeah, and it's small enough to where you can trial and error it just fine if you want to. It's NBD, and you run into the sage outside of the temple here, unlike in the temple.
Out.
Yeah, he got chased out by all the. Man, there's a big bee in there. Yeah, I don't want to go back in there. There's a big bee.
I'm allergic to being skewered through the torso.
Yeah, I'm allergic to stabs. Yeah. So this is the Forest Temple, which introduces a couple of new gameplay mechanics, and it's just in generally a little bit more robust.
Yeah, you get the statue button puzzles, pushing stuff around. So now we have block puzzles, which Gary, I think the block puzzles are maligned. I always enjoy them, even if they are super easy. It's very satisfying to solve them.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't bother me at all. Yeah. It is not. I think maybe people who are mad at them are thinking of them as that. What is the fucking puzzle? The sliding block puzzle?
Oh, 15.
15. The press pause in Final Fantasy 1 puzzle. That's the shit. That's, not the shit in a good way, but the shit, the kind of shit I leave in my toilet. If I don't want it anymore.
That's the kind of shit that I send back to the city.
Yeah, it's that kind of shit.
Yeah.
These are fine. I don't know if I necessarily would go as far as say I really like them, but they don't bother me at all.
Yeah, it's it's like scratching a very easy itch.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's easy. It's still satisfying in a way.
Yeah. You get bombs as well. Unlike later Zelda, these are Zelda 1 bombs where they just blow up where you leave them. You can't manipulate them or throw them or anything like that. And bombable walls are introduced.
Yes. Which just manifest as tumors on the wall.
Yeah.
Looks like, or lesions. I love the way the bombs animate, how they oscillate between two vastly different sizes.
Yeah.
And the explosion sprite is just, there's something about the that it does that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Also,
Indiana Jones-esque arrow traps as well.
Yeah, and those are going to pop up again throughout this. The trick is to face them and use your shields, because of the strafing.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is still a reasonable size. You can easily do both of these first two in one sitting.
Yeah.
Without refreshing your beverage.
Yeah. The next dungeon is where they get a meteor.
Yeah. But the Queen Bee is pretty cool. I like this.
I like this boss fight quite a bit. So she's a bee. She flies around. She's got tiny bees surrounding her that she sends out towards you. And you can actually, it's kind of interesting with the mechanic of having the strong sword when you're at full life. These enemies that have adds, when you kill them, you can get life up and get back to full health if you're hovering around there anyway. And that can become useful.
Right. And also in a nod to reality, if you use bombs, you can actually stun her with the smoke.
Yeah. Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah. And then that makes it easier to line up a shot, which is good.
Yeah, this is a good boss fight. This is real good.
Yeah, I even liked it a lot when they brought it back, when they added the extra guard bees around her later on.
Yeah. All the last dungeon second run bosses I like for the most part. If I like them the first time around, I like them more the second time around.
Yeah.
And the second dungeon or the last dungeon, despite being 2 hours of gameplay, is I actually think is pretty good. It's just long.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you find out a little bit of the lore of this game. You find out that Lee has certain friends that were captured by the Dark Bishop. After you beat this guy and you get your apples up and such.
Yeah, and you go back out and you say, "Hey, buddy, your temple's safe again."
Yeah, that bee. I took care of that bee, man. There's a giant newspaper, and he gives you the reflect magic, which I am fine with this if I feel like this kind of felt mandatory too, except that. I wish I could ignore it and fight the mages without it.
Yeah.
Having it as a utility against the mages would feel good, but this ended up being the thing I had selected for most of the game. Just because if you go into a room and there are mages, I might as well pop this off. It ended up being kind of more useful than the boomerang or the arrow or any of the. So it was pretty much this and the hook shot that I switched back and forth between.
Right.
For almost the entire game.
It's pretty humane how they let you select what's in your hotbar too.
Oh, yeah.
Because that can spiral out of control real quick if you just keep everything in there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And you just L2 and R2 to scroll between.
Yeah. And this is more useful than, just for fighting the Magi. Like, there are statues who will shoot magic attacks at you. And even though you can't take them down by reflecting it back, it makes it so you don't have to. It's one less thing you have to dodge. I, too, would have been really happy if there was some kind of amulet or some kind of other special weapon that lets you damage them through normal means. I don't like this being mandatory as a way to clear a room, because there are just some situations where you are going to be out of magic. Even if all of the Magi always drop magic potions to restore that meter.
Well, exactly, because if you're out of magic, there's no way to get it back. Right. And the Magi are the most reliable way to get it back if you need it for another magic, for a different, which ends up happening a lot in the ice dungeon, or the fire dungeon, rather.
Is this like a Monopoly level, let's say, satire of capitalism?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, gotta have a experience to get a job. Gotta have a job to get experience.
Occupy.
Yeah. Hashtag.
What are we trying to bring back? Hashtag Occupy.
Yeah, the thing, the woman who the Occupy Wall Street Google employee is bonkers.
Oh, Justine Tunney?
Yeah,
she's crazy.
Let's not bring that back because she's awful.
Yeah.
So
she fell in with Arini, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like she's next level. Like, I mean, like, see what you like. I like, as far as as I become more socially aware, and a couple people have pointed out, like, hey, like crazy and bonkers, those are kind of ableist slurs. It's like, oh, I've been saying them for 34 years. Like, I don't think I can stop saying things are crazy. But I think that she is legit crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I think that she is mentally ill and needs help and is harmful.
Yeah.
To others.
Yeah, there are certain kinds of people who the internet is really bad for.
Yes,
especially when they find an accepting group of people who are going to confirm their views and dissuade them, make them feel like, oh, the problem isn't with me, so I don't need to go get help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who could be like mentally? I feel like if you're aligning with Aruni, or if like you're like, that guy's got some good ideas, like you should be unfit to stand trial. Like that is just next level, like, bad judgment. It's just incredible, because that guy is such an obvious piece of garbage that, like, I don't know how anyone takes that guy seriously.
Oh man. Yeah, but they've all got magic cards made of them. It's good.
It's so funny. Those things are so great. God, fucking Dark Enlightenment. What are you doing, Dark Enlightenment?
The bishop wandered into the wilderness to contemplate isolation.
We should make for Patreon rewards some month. We should make a Dark Enlightenment style magic cards of us.
Let us know if you want that.
Yeah, or in the merch, there can be a right and answer on the merch survey, a magic set. That's our Dark Enlightenment quotes about the free market. Let's talk about what you can do after this. And he also tells you to head out to the desert temple to the east.
Yes, yeah. And this is a nice little nod to usability. Like, something that people love about the first Zelda is that there's really you just go out and find it. Like, it leaves it to you. I didn't check and see if you could go to these in any order. But it's nice to know that they just exist and you can go into them. But it's always good to know what the next one I ought to go to is.
Yeah, you can't. You need the wire rod to get to the next one. Most of the nonlinearity is in the side stuff in this game. Yeah. So you do need and then I think you do need the flame rod to get to the 5th dungeon, because there's a bush in the way.
Okay.
A sword-proof bush.
Yeah. There's a guy at Warden's house, that inn, who will make you a wood bat, which I think you can upgrade to a home run bat in a nod to I about said Homestuck and Earthbound. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is the first place I didn't know whether you had it in the notes to talk about later, mini games.
Yeah.
Because this is the first place you can play the tower defense one.
I didn't play any of these. I kind of can't stand tower defense games. And the dashing isn't that fun to me.
Yeah. I played them, so I can talk about those.
Yeah, good.
We're shoring each other up. Look at you doing all the side quests and me doing all the mini games. It is a very difficult tower defense game, and right off the bat it is incredibly hard, which is, I think, kind of a mistake. Like, I like tower defense games, and I can even handle hard ones, and this one has a really interesting system where it's actually all in engine. So it's just you walking around a room, and you have the ability to place towers, and you can attack enemies that are moving through. But there's a weird risk reward where the longer you stay still, the more you level up. And so you can turn yourself into a tower kind of, and can eventually become pretty powerful. The big problem with that is you can't go around and collect gold that the enemies are dropping if you're standing still. So like it becomes kind of a risk reward between getting the material rewards for defeating the wave versus defeating the wave at all. And I did the first couple of stages of these because I do like tower defense, but they're 25 waves long right off the bat and really, really difficult.
That is way
all
too
the mini
long.
games
That
I
is
think
too
are
many waves.
That is way too many waves. And then like all the mini games I think are too hard. There's Dash Circuit, which is a race which relies on your ability to have pinpoint control on your dash, because unlike in some of the Zelda games where you have dash, which you can turn partway through, and that's very difficult, and you need really exacting times to get rewards from that. And then there is a blockout clone where it's just you walking around back and forth on the bottom of the screen using your shield to reflect things back up against blockout. And I think this is probably the most successful of the mini games, but still pretty tricky.
Yeah, I played the dash one and I played the breakout one. But I just had a really hard time with the breakout actually, because I couldn't get the angles right.
It is hard. Yeah, it's slightly less hard than the other two. But yeah, these I think are a little bit too hard, but they're fun little diversions.
Is there some kind of ultimate reward for getting all of them?
Yes, there's a sword that's exclusive to getting all of the tower defense ones, and then the other ones I think are apple pieces or money or small blocks, which you use to exchange for swords later. So, but I think the wing sword, the one that for doing really well in the tower defense, and then I think also the dash one, you get the sword that ups your movement speed in general, which is pretty cool.
Nice, even when you're just walking.
Yeah,
oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I did not get that. I just looked at it online.
Yeah. So yeah, those kind of become available in different stages. Like different ends will have people who unlock those as you go throughout the game. Yeah. You kind of head out east through to the desert into Ortego Village, where you buy really cheap taco shells that break. Yep. There we go. Gonna check that joke off the list. Proceeding nicely. Okay. And just another town. It's kind of nice how there are like as many villages that are as detailed as Rayjack is. Yeah, there are really only 3 villages in the town, but they're all, and Rayjack is the biggest, but this one is also substantial. So the other towns, unlike like Zelda 3, like there are more than one little settlement, and you get this and kind of do some side quests. Yeah, so you can bring some dancers into town. And a weird echo of that. Bring on the girls. Yes, and a weird echo of that. The Redoran quest in Morrowind, where you had to bring women so that people would settle there. Yeah. There's some salesmen who are in trouble trying to figure stuff out. My favorite is there's a guy who's begging for water, and he gives you a jar, and you have to go get him some water. Turns out he's not dying of thirst; he just needs to do his laundry. Yeah, but that's how you get a jar. So. Yeah, and jars are useful. It kind of is a little bit like, and I realized this was something else that not so much that this game takes from Souls, but that Souls actually took from Zelda, is the Estus system kind of reflects the jar system in Zelda 3. Yeah. Like you can set out to a dungeon with 4 heals with you. You have a limited number of heals with you depending on that. And like I was just like, oh, that makes sense now in a way I didn't really consider before. You want to buy, if you want to do these side quests, stock up on Wind Wings. Oh yeah. Which are your fast travel option. And one of the cool things this game does that I don't see in other games is that you can actually get a bulk discount for buying things, which like almost never happens. But if you buy a 5-pack or a 9-pack of Wind Wings, they're cheaper. So that's cool. Yeah, it scales. Yeah, so that is nice. You can fly to any end, which really streamlines, especially the later portion of the game. Like right now, the map size is manageable, but yeah, it's always nice to have something to save time. Yeah, we also didn't talk about, and I'm just because I'm thinking about buying stuff. Dark rooms in dungeons. I think that they are already introduced, but so buying candles and lamps is very useful. But kind of frustratingly, like. You'll just go into a dark room, and a lot of times you light it up and there's just like 2 bats in there, and you can just walk out if you know which way to go. So I'm not a huge into that mechanic, but once you buy them for the first time, they become consumables that you can pick up in pots and shit. Right. So once you buy them the first time, you more or less, you buy like a 5-pack of candles and you're probably good. It feels like something they put in there more as a Zelda nod than as something that actually helps the game.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy they Zelda let that slowly drop away, the mechanic of needing light. And here it just kind of became a frustration because they happen so infrequently. There are whole dungeons where you don't use it.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of fumble through the inventory, it doesn't add as much as I would like for something that inconvenient to add.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And you go south from the town, you run into the Candata Inn, which is this small little inn on your way to the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And there's if you talk to all the patrons in this in a certain order, you will get a clue about this desert, which tells you about because this is the gimmick here are conveyor belt.
Yep.
So they call them quicksand, but they're really conveyor belts.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to the dungeon is you always have to go between two cacti.
Yeah. You remember all those like serial movies from the 30s where somebody would get caught into quicksand and they're panicking, like, throw me a vine. I'm moving away from you very slowly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I'm not sinking or anything. I just might end up somewhere I don't want to end up.
Right. It'll be a
I
real
might have to do
hassle
this
get
part
back.
over. Help.
Ah, no. Yep. Yeah. So that's the way to kind of hit the critical path. I enjoyed kind of just seeing where stuff came out.
Mm-hmm.
You can find some neat things over on the side. And there are other paths that you can get to that end up paying off a little bit later once you have more mobility.
Yeah. So you're on your way. You go to the desert temple, which is the first like meaty dungeon of the game. Like I feel like this is like they've spent the last two dungeons and interstitial areas training you, and this is like where the real Dark Souls starts here.
Yeah.
So to speak.
So it's really big, substantially bigger. I don't know if this has more floor. Actually, yes, this introduces more floors, which for some reason to me feels like a massive bump in complexity. Like all of a sudden I can't see all of this on one screen. And so that just to me is like a psychic toll that this entails. That's probably a very grave way to put it. But yeah, you're dealing with that, and also you're going from floor to floor. There's these special tiles you can stand on to drop through, and you can use parallax to reveal which ones are correct.
Yes. Yep. And you run into those magi we talked about, where you had to reflect their magic back at them.
Yeah.
The treasure of this dungeon is the wire rod, aka hookshot, which more or less acts exactly like the hookshot, and you can make it move a little faster and longer up in the mountains in kind of an obscure little nook corner. And you do actually use that for this dungeon,
right?
Unlike other dungeons where you don't always use the gimmick in the dungeon itself.
Yeah. And I'm very happy that this took the wire rod or the hookshot out of the water dungeon. Because even though the hookshot is my favorite Zelda item, it is almost always in my least favorite dungeon in a Zelda game.
Yeah. Yep. And here it's and it works almost exactly the same. Like it will stun and mildly damage enemies. Mm-hmm. And again, you just kind of make your way through the dungeon. We're glossing over it because, as we mentioned, it's hard to talk about the specifics. But this one is more significant and more difficult. And this was the first one where I got to the end. So there's a little warp point at the end of every dungeon right before the boss, which allows you to go back to the entrance. And that is a huge lifesaver. Right. Again, kind of echoing from software style shortcuts. Mm-hmm. Once you get to the end, you can get back there easily. Yep. And you can use sleeping bags to heal up or fly back to town and refill on healing potions and such.
Yeah, I tried to avoid doing that as much as possible because, like, especially this one and most of the ones after this, it becomes kind of a hodge to get, from settlement back here.
Well, because they don't make the dungeons warp points, which they should have.
Right.
Yeah, especially later when they really egregiously make you revisit all of them for no particular reason. Like, that's really annoying.
Want a reason? Fuck you, that's why.
Yeah, exactly, because fuck you.
Yes. The boss here, pretty tough. They're starting to get more grandiose. Fighting a swarm of bees is cool. However, a gigantic golem that slowly turns into a laser tank, it's kind of some next level shit. Yeah,
and it's the thing with this guy that you can, if you circle around him counterclockwise and don't stop, you won't get hit if you don't let him box you in.
Okay.
Which is the hard part, because like he has two arms that come out and he's kind of shaped like a U, and he's trying to kind of push you up against the wall where you can't keep circling him. Like when he does the laser, he always does it from his right to his left.
Right.
So if you're circling that way, it will never hit you.
Right.
But it's hard because you have to manage where he's at in the arena. I actually really like this boss fight.
That's
like, this is really cool, and it progresses in a neat way. Like the difficulty ramps up as he gets closer to dying. Which is super cool.
Yeah, I always like that. Especially when it's not just Dark Souls does this a lot at 50%. A special power is activated. That there are multiple stages to this.
Yeah, it's super granular.
Yeah, which is really cool. The sage didn't vacate, which is nice. He gives you the power I think that I used the least, which is
the normal map.
Yeah, the normal map, which is just an AoE like shockwave kind of thing.
Yeah. I used it a couple times to check it out, but it's not super useful.
Again, it looks neat.
Yeah.
Like the way that this treats pixels, like it shoots them up like a rod almost to make this. It's like almost like that thing you probably bought in a museum gift shop that had the pins that you like press your hand into. Yeah.
Or your face.
Oh yeah.
Makes super scary. Like a lawnmower man.
Terminator. Yeah.
Yeah. And you find out the Aqua Temple is south of the castle.
Yeah. And now that you have the wire rod, you pretty much have the run of the map. There's only like 5% that you can't go to, something like that. Yeah. You can get in Ortego, you can do a little quest to get the Ultima book, which is a nice little Final Fantasy nod. Aside from the fact that the next village you go to is Corneria, the Ultima book, they say, oh, too bad it costs 99 magic to cast.
Yeah, which you'll never have.
Right.
Because you max out at like 8.
Yep.
I think you max out at 16, but nowhere near, which is pretty funny. And you can get you can talk to a woman in Ortega and get the bestiary, which is just for collecting.
Right.
And the way it does it, like you don't get a bestiary entry for running into a monster. You get into it for literally throwing a book at them enough times.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cute, but I'll never do that.
Yeah.
So
I just love the idea of slamming a book against somebody to get them in there. Like, think about how many people Charles Dickens killed.
Yeah. 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 The whole orphanage.
I know. Right?
Just not so artfully dodging now, are you? Bam, bam.
That poor old woman with her cake.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be fun to throw the book into the cake, though.
Oh, yeah.
To get the bestiary entry for Mrs. Havisham's haunted cake.
All the spiders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how I kill spiders anyway. So.
Oh yeah.
So you head to Colneria village, which is Corneria, just with the Japanese LR thing. And if you want to, you can go. Ooh, like I'm sorry. This is a part of me reading along the notes and not saying who's this merchant you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's like a little path. It's not quite obvious. You go across like all the way over to the east by the desert. It's not really that difficult, but it's a merchant who will sell you like a ring or something like that like cuts the damage that you take in half. Or reduces it by a quarter or something. Yeah,
it's the quarter version because you find the half one in a dungeon later. And I remember thinking like, oh, I feel like I skipped a step. And I obviously did because I couldn't find that. I didn't find that merchant.
And he also has one of your first major sword upgrades that you can get. Like this is just a new sword. Because up until this point, you've really just been kind of using the ancient sword.
And if you want to, you could use the bat or use, if you wanted to, but it's not significantly better.
Right. Like this is a step up. It's a lot of money, like which you might not have at this point. Like the bosses are pretty lucrative propositions for this, but if you want to invest.
What sword is it?
I forget what it's called.
Because this is where I went off on a side quest to get the hero sword, or not the hero sword, the holy sword. And that's what I use for the stretch of the game, and that's pretty good.
Yeah,
you get that near the desert temple. It's in like a cave you blow open.
Yeah, I know that I had the holy sword at some point, but I can't say what this is. Yeah, I just looked it up. It's the claymore.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the claymore and the silver ring.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
The holy sword also functions pretty well too. The claymore, I think, its big advantage is that it's wider.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a possible advantage. Like even when it is in its regular flaccid state, it is wider than in other swords. So
yeah, so the swords do have. I mean, the swords are pretty long. Like even when they're flaccid, they can be twice as tall or 3 times as tall as you are.
The swords are showers.
Yes. Even when they end up, and they're showers and growers.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's a double threat.
Yeah. You're heading down to the Aqua Temple. And when you enter, a tentacle pops out of the water and takes Lee. Which, hilariously, I had to leave this temple more than once, and Lee comes out and is like, thank goodness I escaped. If that happens again, make sure you rescue me, okay? And then when you come back, she says, man, I have a bad feeling about this. I remember something bad happened last time I was here, but I don't remember what. Let's just hope it doesn't happen again. And then gets kidnapped. And then that happens in the next dungeon as well.
Yep.
Which is great.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Just this gigantic like tentacle with the big suckers just up and
Yep.
up and done grab it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just her short-term memory loss is very funny to me.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
But this is the Aqua Temple, which fortunately it doesn't fall into the Zelda problem of needing to deal with water levels.
Yeah, there's nothing that adjusts a water level.
Yeah.
Which I never need to seek it. Even in Link Between Worlds, which is, a masterful Zelda game, the water level stuff was not great.
Right.
Like, it's never good.
But this introduces, I don't know what these enemies are. The trees, they look like they're like pine trees.
Yeah, they're like botoniulas or botoniculas or something like that in the guide I was looking at.
Yeah.
But they essentially they tap you. They're like those head crabs in Half-Life 2 that knock you down to 1 to 5 hit points or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those ones that take you down to half a heart happen later. These guys just do
gotcha.
4 hearts of damage, which at this
Gotcha.
point, if you're just kind of trucking along, could be a third to a quarter of your health.
Yeah, that's still significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to indicate that they do that. So it actually took me a while to realize how much damage they were doing to me.
Yeah, which this is the first dungeon, as we mentioned, we both left this and came back. That's probably because this is the first dungeon where you're going to have to take kind of multiple trips to clear it, which luckily there's like a permanence to it. Even if you die and continue, the keys you found, the doors you unlocked, that all stays. And up until the next dungeon, that progress remains too.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of treat it like a D&D dungeon where you're making trips in and out.
Yeah.
To kind of get all the treasure and make incremental progress. And then the next dungeon, which is my least favorite thing in the game, throws that out the window.
Right.
But this dungeon, that's still in full effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this feels almost like a happy medium between dungeon size and almost like linearity.
Yeah.
You're not doing like these huge sweeps across the entire dungeon, like to use that key that you just found.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, this is probably the one of my favorite dungeons in the game, probably like as far as just the difficulty curve, hitting the middle. You get the magic shield here, which blocks more kinds of attacks and also opens up the FedEx quest to get the ultimate shield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wish I liked the boss of this more.
Yeah.
I don't care for the Kraken very much.
No, it's too long actually.
Yeah.
Like and also I don't feel like the hook shot is snappy enough to get me around as quickly as I would need to.
The ultimately, like what I ended up figuring out for this guy, which is an unsatisfying way to fight him, is to just go in with full health and only stab him when I can reach him with my ultra sword from the beginning, from the entry, and then just dodge between tentacles when they get close to me, because there won't be that many that hit you in that first platform.
Right.
But never, get hit, because once you get hit, then you have to do a lot of crossing between rod posts to get to the head of this. We didn't really say what this guy is. He's an octopus head that pops up, and then there are tentacles that kind of come up and like flaccidly, lazily kind of flop onto you.
Yeah, somebody shouts lumber, and then they're down.
And they just come boo.
Yeah,
and you have to use these posts to kind of get around to get close to the head when it's up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the way this guy looks. There's something about his color that's great. And also, I'm always going to be freaked out by an octopus's perfectly circular tentacle suckers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought, like, I could have swore that, killing the tentacles would do something, but they're unlimited, which is also unsatisfying. Like, the first couple times I took a run at this boss, I kept like, okay, I just need to get these tentacles down, and then I'll be able to make my way unmolested to go stab him in the face, and that's not the case.
Yeah, and attacking them wastes precious time. Like, as you are making your way there, he will just dive underwater. So it really just benefits you. Avoid the platforms where these tentacles are, get to his main body, do as much damage as you can, and then just kind of like reconfigure from there.
Yeah. Afterwards, there's no sage in this dungeon.
Right.
Because the sage is back at Colneria, which we knew. We ran into her on our way here. And, she said, oh, I might be the sage. I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. When you get there, she can't teach you the magic. And she says, oh, I've heard that like a great pain can sometimes awaken the magic within somebody. Stab me with your sword. And you essentially
fuck her?
Yeah, you make this woman come.
Right.
To give her sage powers.
Like she shouts out, I'm almost there, don't stop.
Yeah, it's very sexual with you just zeldaing this sword over and over. And then after she orgasms magic onto you, she says like, oh, that was great. If you want to do that again, it'd be okay. And then I kept stabbing her and nothing else happened. Not for like beat off purposes, but just because I wanted to see what would happen.
Just matching pace.
Yeah, exactly. I just putting the controller at the top of my Twangus, and then just every time my fist does an upswing, it hits the button as well. So,
man, I forget. Did she say to touch the sage inside her?
No,
or did I just?
Though.
Okay, yes.
I think you just made that, but that's
just something I wrote down. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
But she gives you a very useful magic.
Oh yeah.
That more or less trivializes one of the most difficult enemies in the game.
Right.
This is the freeze.
Yeah. Also the ugliest magic.
Yeah.
It puts like a 1990s era PlayStation 1, let's say Cool Borders ice sprite over the entire, like just paints it on there. It's really chunky, really gross. It's hard to see anything when it's up.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the one instance I think where this game falls down visually.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
Right.
It only lasts for one room. So luckily you're not doing it that much. So there's some more interstitial stuff you can do in between here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can meet a guy named Moyamoto, which he gets his brother and his girlfriend, I guess, something like that. You can also go to a place called Jim's Shack. Which, sounds like a great like rib place.
Yeah. Yep.
Where it's kind of like your last real place to get some story stuff like gameplay kind of things. Like there's a guy who sells those colored keys, which are going to be real important later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to get the final shield, you need at least one of each, and then within the dungeon there'll be doors that open to these that give you like magic upgrades usually.
Yeah,
or small blocks that you can trade to a certain cave merchant for upgrades and swords.
Yeah. And there's also a side quest to get the spiciest pepper in the world, which I like these little fixations that everybody seems to have.
Yeah, I think that the Canaria is the area that has the person who's deciding who to marry, or is that in Ortega?
That's in Ortega.
Yeah, that's a Dragon Quest 4 reference, I believe. Mm-hmm. Like a really direct, and I was just reading about this because I haven't played that Dragon Quest yet, shamefully. But he's like, I want to marry this person. She's prettier, and I think she might have better spells, but this person is nicer, and it will be better at dungeons or something like that. It's a real like sly Dragon Quest reference that I wish I had picked up on and didn't.
Yep, and if you come back later, they have kids.
Yeah, yep, in Dragon Quest fashion again, referencing how fast that seems to move when you're playing that game with the generations.
Nice.
Yep. So you're heading up this volcano path to get this next dungeon. And this is a huge difficulty spike.
Yeah.
After what feels like we just had a difficulty spike.
Yep.
On your way here, you're kind of going in and out of Death Mountain, essentially.
Yeah. And it's a really long walk. I really wish that there was some kind of warp to the dungeon after you find it. Just because this dungeon is so massive, I had to resupply, and it was a real drag.
Well, man, when you resupply, the problem with this, so we get to the Flame Temple, which is my least favorite dungeon in this game, or maybe in a Zelda game. I hate it because it's a switch dungeon. So like the switches that you do in Zelda, the little orbs that make blue blocks go up and red blocks go down. In Zelda, they fuck around with those by allowing you to manipulate them from a distance. Like you can throw bombs, or you can like leave a bomb and then walk away. Here, stepping on them is the only thing that does them, that flips them. And you have to go through these rooms in a certain order.
Yeah.
And if you die or end up having to resupply, you have to start over. Mm-hmm. Like you can't start halfway through this dungeon. It's the whole dungeon, which is huge, or you can warp. But if you haven't unlocked the warp yet, you have to do the whole fucking thing again. Yeah. And that's goddamn obnoxious and made me really upset.
Yeah. And also, like, because this is so big and because the switch state isn't really conveyed on the mini-map, like, okay, here's a door I didn't unlock, or here is a room that I haven't gone into. It was really difficult to figure out where to go next, in spite of how linear it was. I found myself just kind of like wandering in circles because I didn't have any real sense of direction, or it wasn't obvious that, there is this one little corner back here that you couldn't get to because of X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. I broke down and used a guide for this that was literally just like go north twice, go east once.
Oh no.
Flip switch, go west once. Like I was so mad because I was just so sick of just doing it over and over again. Mm-hmm. Like I really hit a wall. Like I was doing this and I felt like I'm not going to beat this in time for the show. Mm-hmm. This is infuriating. And like I'm losing goodwill for this game through this dungeon, which like doesn't have that much to recommend it other than that. Like even if you ignore this like kind of egregious sin that it makes. Like, it's not that fun in general. Like, the only thing it really introduces, other than this like 100% linear path, which like, no need of 100% linearity in Zelda. That's the point. But are these like rock spraying traps in the middle of the room that are not that interesting.
Right.
So
yeah. I forget. Is this where they introduced the night enemies that you can only attack from behind?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which those guys, and because I have the freeze spell, they're fine.
Yeah.
Like those are use freeze on those guys. A couple times I ran out of magic and had to fight them without it, and figured out a system for it. But the easiest way is just to freeze them and shatter them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did too. But freeze is so expensive that ends up being another kind of magic tax on it.
Yeah. Yep. Luckily, it's not mandatory like the mages. Like, you can fight them without freezing them if you're able to.
Yeah. You get the fire wand, which isn't really as useful as you would like. It's really just for burning bushes on the main field of play.
Yeah. I never tried using it on enemies. It's okay.
It's all right. I would just rather keep the hook shot and not have to switch between stuff.
Yeah. You get to the boss, which is a huge dragon, which looks amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Like the intro scenes, you can do these little intro scenes wherever they break the perspective in this game and it stops looking like a model. Like, it's always really striking. And these little intro scenes where they introduce the bosses always do that and look really cool.
And they've been escalating it up to this point. Like, this is, this guy isn't bigger than the Kraken, but he's far more impressive because you can see all of them at once.
Yeah. And essentially he kind of is a combination of the statue boss that you fought the first time, who kind of flies up and slams down on you. And then that one first dragon boss in Zelda, that three-headed dragon. Yeah. That just kind of shoots fireballs at you, and you have to kind of weave between them to stab him.
Right. I feel like he has way too much HP, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a huge difficulty spike as far as bosses too. This, I needed I had to be full up on heals to take this guy out, and ended up doing the most damage. I could just stand back and be at full sword and just stab him a bunch of times. But it just took a long time to beat him.
Yeah, that's a real strategic advantage because you can stay out of his hurt zone. That way. You can also buy yourself some time. If you use the boomerang on him, he will rear back and expose a weak spot on his chest.
Yes, yeah, which is highlighted when they introduce him, and it's nice to get that with the old boomerang friend.
Yeah.
After you beat him, frustratingly, the sage is not there.
Right.
And you have to go to all the other dungeons where you find a sage who's like, no, I heard he was going this way. And that's just egregious and time-wasting.
There's no reason for it. Like, if it's a reference to something, it's a reference to something I probably would have hated in the original incarnation. So.
Yeah, and it's no fun here. He gives you the slowdown magic, which is useful for a couple of puzzles, a couple of like sliding spike trap kind of puzzles.
Yeah,
and it ends up being kind of expensive to cast, but is not a bad magic. I use it more than I use the flat map or regular map one.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where you can go and find the first of the extra fairies. So we alluded to Lee's friends who were split up and captured by Dark Bishop Fuel or whatever, and one of them is kept in this tower down to the east of Corneria, or to the west of the desert. Yeah, which you have to do a little bit of tricky maneuvering to get around. This is pretty cool because you answer quizzes. So it's like, what is the name of the first sage? And if you don't know it, they send enemies at you.
Yeah, it's neat they made it. It's also cool because it's optional. Like going and you get an alternate ending for getting all of the fairies and rescuing the princess, which you wouldn't do otherwise. Right. And this is the second time I played through the game. The first time I didn't even know this was a thing. Right. And then this time using a guide more. I ended up going for it. Yep. So you can also go get the hero sword from this graveyard in the southwest. You talk to somebody and they say the hero was buried there. And this sword, it was the sword I ended up using for the whole game. Like this, if you upgrade it a few times, is good enough to carry you. Right. It's a really, really good weapon.
Yeah. This is what I used until I got the moon sword. Even though the moon sword is not as good as this or the Giga sword, I really disliked using the moon sword.
Yeah.
Because this is the show we do.
Yeah, because from.
Yeah. And this kind of takes you beyond another inn, which nothing really that noteworthy happens at, to the Wind Temple in this blasted heath or whatever it's called.
Yeah. This isn't too bad. No. It's not, the big trick here is that there are these fans that will blow you, but
it's
they're
like
kind of
being
trivialized.
a motley crew.
Yes, exactly.
Continue. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. if you hold up your shield, you're actually better at pushing against the fan by creating more surface area for the fan to push against.
Right.
Apparently.
Yep.
So that makes sense.
Well, no, wind only affects you if it's
Touching your skin.
Touches your skin. Why do you think people can drive in cars?
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Did you think about that, Butterfield?
I didn't. Clearly not. So the gimmick of this dungeon is not particularly tough, but it is just a big, complicated dungeon.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. And just this turns into a little bit more of a platforming game. This is really the first place where pits become a real issue.
Yeah.
And I also remember them kind of using quicksand. They've had it, smatterings of it throughout dungeons, but this whole thing is just about complicating your movement as much as possible.
Yeah. This is where those tree enemies that act like the poisonous head crabs.
Yeah, the machinariums.
Yeah, which end up, and these things suck. Yeah. So if you see one of those, it's your duty to take it out as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, like as we mentioned, when you go into a room, the enemy placement is randomized, so you can kind of get yourself fucked.
Yep.
And have one kind of within your blind spot, especially in a dark room.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed like a little bit of an oversight to me.
Yeah, a little bit. Also, they throw a lot of knights in, which I think keeps with the theme of just complicating things and making them more hard than they ought to be. Like things you were taking for granted before, which is a good, fun design escalation, I think.
And they mix them with magi. So if you freeze everything, you can take out the knights, but you still can't shatter the magi, which is obnoxious. You have to wait for them to thaw out and then just block them. And that's if you have enough magic left after casting freeze, which is kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, which is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The key item here is the miracle boots, which are not very exciting. They just allow you to walk on poisoned ground.
Yeah, it's just a key to the final area.
Which kind of not that fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the boss of this map is the Nutcracker. Actually, it's the Dark Knight. But he moves exactly like a Nutcracker.
Yeah, I like this guy. He's pretty easy, but I like the way that he moves, and I like that he looks like a human, but he's just huge.
Yep.
But it is such a weird difficulty curve thing. Like this whole dungeon is so much easier than the flame dungeon.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what made them put this before the flame dungeon
or after it.
Oh yeah, sorry, after it. There we go.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like it really seems like difficulty wise, the flame dungeon should have been the penultimate, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a breather before the final dungeon, which is kind of a slog.
Yeah. I would accept that.
Yeah. But you get this, and there's no sage again. This is your sixth and final orb that you have, and there's some stuff that you can do, but ultimately you're headed to the castle.
Yes.
You can get a ray gun, which is a super niche weapon because it won't fire if you're not at full health if you get a ray jack. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not get that.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
You have to basically what you have to do is you have to invest in this inventor in order to get. So say, man, I'm so sorry. I need 1,000 gold. I need 1,500 gold, like a couple of different times, and ultimately it pays off with this thing, which isn't very good.
I did that in order to get the lightning shield. Because he asks for money to upgrade your shield after you've made it into a flame shield.
Okay.
But other than that, like I didn't know that was a continuing event. I thought he just wanted money for my lightning shield.
Yeah.
So
you can rescue the last fairy, which completes the princess. She coalesces into one.
Yeah.
Super gross. If you go to the inn and Rayjack and sleep, you get an achievement that said "Have a good night."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Presuming that you sprayed face all of the princess.
I was gonna say slipping her the bone, but somehow yours trumped mine. So okay.
You had sex with this pixel princess.
Yep. Yep, and that is definitely on DeviantArt. Yep.
And you head to the king mostly because of lack of knowing what else to do. And you're attacked by Bishop Fuel, and you can't beat him at this point. You have to fend him off until the sages arrive to help you out, which is a nice little moment.
Yeah.
Again, like just gathering all the people. It's a RPG trope that I always like.
Yeah. And Origin, he's a bald monk. He's like, hey guys, sorry, I was out getting groceries.
Yes.
And he gives you lightning, which is the least useful spell in the game, except for that one boss fight.
It's exactly like the lightning from Zelda 2, where it's like too expensive to cast it on anything other than the last boss where you have to use it.
You know what? I typoed here, and also I took it incorrectly in my notes. It's lighting, not lightning.
Oh, I read it as lightning too.
Yeah.
Even though that makes more sense for what it does is lighting.
Yeah.
Huh.
I just double checked that because I was like, is that actually true? That's what that's called?
Interesting.
But yeah, this is the last thing that you need, and they tell you to go forth to the Dark Tower, Child Roland.
Yes. And there's a couple other little side things you can do at this point. Out of the ones on the list here that you have, the only one I did was go get the hero shield.
Yeah.
There's like a challenge cave that's full of super difficult rooms that you can mostly just run past and get to a guy. You find a thief in the end of it who heard that there was this, heard there's this treasure here, said there wasn't, but that he would trade you this crappy old shield he found for your shield. And it turns out to be the shield that can block everything and is more or less essential for this last dungeon.
Yeah. And really the only other quest is if you have every key item, you can go back to the From software guys who have been growing their operation between every dungeon in order to get the Moon Sword. It's actually easier to get it in the American version than the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, you have to have done all of the events, which includes mastering all of the mini games.
Yeah, no thanks.
Fuck that. No.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm not that interested in that. And mostly, so then you're on your way to the Dark Tower, which is a huge dungeon. Like it is like a couple hours. So imagine like how long like a Zelda dungeon you usually spend like 45 minutes in one. This is definitely a couple hours.
Yeah.
It's like by volume the bulkiest part of the game. And what it is a little miniature version of all the dungeons you've led up to at this point. And like, I kind of like it. Like it is as an expression of like, this is the final exam part of the game that didn't happen before.
Right.
Like when we were talking about how the other dungeons, like there isn't the like, now you have the boomerang, here's how you use it. Like here is kind of where it's not laying everything out for you and it's making you remember all the stuff you've done before.
Yeah, it's putting a great deal of trust in you that you've been kind of like paying attention. And it's kind of nice because you are looking back at these old experiences and these old challenges and realizing not just that you are now, you have character knowledge and power, but there's player knowledge and power that kind of goes into knowing the best way to surmount these things. So they're like remixes of these individual dungeons that incorporate elements from later ones in ways that kind of synthesize into a unique experience that, although too long, is exactly right. Like what you said, that final exam that we so treasure. Like that is a great way to end a game.
Yeah, it also the whole thing is too long, but the individual pieces are not. So like the section of this that is the Wind Dungeon is significantly less long than the actual Wind Dungeon. So it's like just the amount of challenge rooms I want with fans.
Right.
And same thing with the Flame Dungeon. Like it's not nearly as, exhausting.
Yeah.
Like the Flame Dungeon section of this.
And the length would be more of an issue if they didn't, after every other boss fight, give you a teleporter out. So you don't have to tackle all of this in one kind of massive go. It is conscientious in that way.
And we didn't mention the your home base for getting back to this thing is the what is it? Nihilive Inn. Which is villain backwards.
Oh yeah.
And when you go to sleep at that inn, they're like, "Well, how did we get our name?" Well, it's actually a boring story. And then he doesn't tell you, but it's villain backwards. And then eventually you can get it, and it's just because they happen to be in the villain's valley, like by the Tower of Death, so they name themselves villain backwards.
I love the area around this too. Like the color palette is super distinct from everything else. It's purple. And really, it's a really good place to farm for coin, actually. Yeah. It's the best place. Like the zombie graveyard is like the best place up until this, and this kind of blows it out of the water. Right.
Yeah.
At the end of each of these little challenge areas for each dungeon, you fight kind of an upgraded version of these bosses, as we alluded to before. And it's not, super substantial, but there's like one or two things about them that's tweaked in order to make it that it is not just a Mega Man style boss rush.
Right. Like they're either faster or they shoot more projectiles or shoot projectiles at all. And in general, like they scale pretty favorably in your favor because your weapon is so much more powerful. So like the fact that you have, I had the hero sword that I'd upgraded a bunch of times meant that even the upgraded version of these bosses were easier than the first time I fought them.
Right.
Yeah.
There
are also these black holes that are introduced. These things suck. They're just navigation problems, and they suck you in and they make you restart a floor if you touch them. I don't like that as a mechanic. I don't like wall masters in Zelda games, like the hands that come down from the ceiling and make you start over. Like, don't make me start something over as a punishment. Like, yes, it is a very effective punishment, but it's punishing the player, not the character, in a way that like is unsatisfying to me.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
No, it's the Wallmaster problem.
Yeah, I dislike wall masters. They're an Isaac now. Fucking wall master.
Oh man, no.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. I haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah, they're like womb enemies, but they're obnoxious.
Yeah, yeah, and boy, when they combine those with dark rooms as well.
Yeah, and they combine them with rooms that you walk into. There'll be a black hole a little too close for comfort. You'll instinctively press backwards, go back into the previous room, and then the enemies respawn in the room you're just in if you killed any of them. There's like one where it's a really narrow bridge with magi and a teleporter, a black hole, and that's just fucking obnoxious.
Yeah, it's a bridge too far.
One of the things that reminded me of Souls in this game, though, is the last floor of this, where it has a couple of traps, but is eerily devoid of enemies. Like that moment of quiet before the actual end boss, like felt really Soulsy to me.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's if you don't have the princess, there's a succubus here. Something.
Yeah,
that
was the first time I played it. Yeah, there's a succubus you fight who looks like the princess, but just walks around like slack-jawed until you try attacking her, and then she turns into a monster, and it's kind of a mini boss fight.
Yeah. But yeah, you go in and you fight Fuel, and this is very reminiscent of what's his name, Alakazam from from Link to the Past. Yeah, he you think this is going to be the final boss fight, but you know there's somebody behind him.
There's always a final form. This boss fight is awesome though because you cast that lighting spell and it lights the torch, and the way you tell the real, he kind of clones himself. The way you tell the real one is because he casts a shadow. But this looks so neat. Like the contrasting art styles, like the really really strong lighting effects, plus the pixel art looks really really cool. Like this end boss looks amazing.
It's a super subtle tell too. Like it's never explicitly said. Like a lesser game, or a game that didn't give you as much credit as this one does, would have gone and said, there's something different about the one that it's like, no.
Right, that has a shadow.
Yeah, they say this is the key to beating this guy who otherwise you can't defeat. And like, I genuinely had to like cycle through a couple of times, and they're, humane enough to give you little burner enemies to kill to like get that back up. I don't think I had to, teleport back in once or twice, for the whole fight. But when I figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, that is genius.
Yeah, it's really cool and looks really great. It's a really good boss fight. When he uses the Dark Orb out of Desperation, which summons Dark King Onyx, of course, he's a villain. And this guy looks really awesome as far as just a badass looking demon, but is not too bad if you can, because you have the mega shield and the mega sword, you can hit him from across the room. You literally can just kind of hang out down at the bottom of the screen and attack him.
Yeah.
Like I beat this guy without getting hit because I could. Like it was just, it was easy for that point.
He has like one or two attacks that will do damage to you regardless, but they are super, they're telegraphed very far in advance. And if you didn't take that extra step to upgrade to the hero shield, then you are in deep, deep trouble. Because this becomes a much more difficult fight.
Because if you have to dodge everything. And the main attack that your shield won't block are those whirlwinds, but they don't reach the bottom of the screen. So if you literally stay as far back as you can, then he literally could not damage me. Which like in one way was unsatisfying, and another way was a testament to, me doing due diligence and upgrading the length of my sword and upgrading my shield and stuff.
Yeah.
So not too bad. And again, like just a little bit like the boss before this was definitely the kind of the highlight as far as a mixture between play and kind of thinking. And this one was a little bit of a letdown, but I could see it being super challenging if you didn't have those advantages going in.
Yeah. And it's another boss that you fight at the top of a gigantic tower.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. You get the Dark Orb back, and all is pretty much right with the world.
Yeah. You get to do this kind of postscript where you can walk around the castle talking to everybody. And they're super charming. Yeah. And there are lots of little jokes and stuff.
I love it when games do that. This reminded me of Pokemon, actually, where you go you do your victory lap around the world talking to people. Yeah.
Yeah, where people had different things to say, and then eventually the king wants to give you his kingdom, and for the first time the silent protagonist speaks up and says you want to start your own kingdom, and then the princess says, if you ever do that, can I come with you? And I don't know what happens if you say no.
I never tried to say no.
Yeah, I didn't say no either because of course you can.
Yeah, come on. Yes, let's leave this kingdom to like wither under a civil war for succession.
Yes,
as the last heir.
Yes, and found 4D Kingdom.
Yep,
somewhere else. and then that's the game. You have a couple of things you can do afterwards. There's a new game plus, where you can do a couple of different modes. There's a from mode, which has a bunch of different, a lot more enemies, and then Spelunker mode, which you die in one hit.
Yep.
Similar to Spelunker, the old famous kind of Kusoge game from Japan.
Yeah, and you have different animations. If you dash into a wall, it'll go into a full-on death animation, but you don't actually die.
Yeah, which is very funny.
Yeah. So that's
and you can access these through codes too. There's also a shieldless mode. You can access through a code as well.
Yeah, that's again Souls as fuck.
We didn't mention there's another developer mode where there's Silicon software. They have a developer cave where they're all represented by monsters, and they tell you these codes.
Oh yeah,
the secret codes if you go in there.
Yeah, like you can get Spelunker mode by naming your guy Spelunker.
Yes,
but it takes away your ability to customize your looks.
Yeah, which is no fun. And that's 3D Dot Game Heroes, which I have continuously called 3D Game Dot Heroes many times in my life.
Well, no, for our entire adult life, we've been trained that dot goes before the last word in a brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's some bad SEO.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, so an SEO expert walks into a bar, a pub, a restaurant, a beer. That's
a funny joke.
Yeah, somebody at work told me that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I just wanted to share it for everybody.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Yeah, and that's this game, which I would recommend. The Souls connection is not as explicit as it could be, but if you like, I feel like, if you like Souls games, you should go back and play like NES games that it takes stuff from, because you will like those things about it anyway. Like you should play this, you should play Zelda 1, you should play Castlevania.
Yeah,
the Castlevanias, because you're going to get a little bit of that itch scratched.
It's heartbreaking that this is so exclusive to PS3. Actually, in a way that it's also heartbreaking that Demon's Souls kind of will probably never get off of that platform.
Bloodborne.
Oh yeah, Bloodborne too.
Yeah,
but even Bloodborne, that's an x86 system. Like PS3 being so impossible to emulate, just like its own weird thing.
Yeah.
Like it's so difficult to port things away from. Like there are so many people now, like, just when we, talked about doing this, oh, I'd love to play that, but I don't have a PS3. And there's really no reason to have a PS3 now, aside from these kind of, there was barely a reason to have a PS3 in the first place. But as it kind of fades into the annals, and they still stay pretty expensive. Like, I would recommend anybody who has the ability to play this, play it, because it's kind of incumbent upon you to like experience this for the people who haven't experienced it. Yeah.
Just play the shit out of those 5 games that are PS3 exclusive that are worth it. Just play them with all your heart.
Yeah.
This game is so weirdly like, one of the reasons why you can tell it's not made by From so much is because it's so affectionate in a way that From isn't, that I really, really love. Like, something we didn't notice or didn't mention was like the loading screens are all mock-ups of Famicom covers.
Yeah.
With the characters from this game. And there's a YouTube I'll put in the show notes that shows all of them. And there's a lot of them. There's like, 50 or something like that. And they're really charming. Like, they're like just amazingly cute. And just, it feels like such a strong love letter that like it's hard for me, even the things that are kind of faulty about it, it's hard for me to be mad at them.
Yeah.
It is just really, really full of charm.
Yeah.
And I would, the company that made this also made Bravely Default, which I bought and haven't started yet.
Yep.
But I would love to see them do another take on like a Nintendo-esque game. So
yeah. There's like when From is affectionate, it's more kind of like tongue in cheek, or approached from a sideways angle, like any of the the Studio Ghibli references they have in there, like with what is it in this crazy forest. I forget the name of that game.
The Crazy Forest.
Yeah, the Crazy Forest. Or any of the Berserk stuff. Like they tend to put an obscurity filter over everything, whereas this is incredibly on the nose in a way which would be otherwise off-putting if it didn't seem so guileless. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very like it wormed its way into my heart.
Yeah.
What are we doing next time, Cole?
Next time we are doing another game which is similarly guileless. I feel like this is the season of genuineness. I think.
Well, until we get to Lords of the Fallen.
Oh, in which just crank up the crass.
Yeah, just crank up the shoulder pads.
All about that crass. You thought I was going to make it rhyme, but I didn't.
Yeah. tap that crass. Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah, but we're playing Shovel Knight, which you should be able to get a hold of if you have a PC, Mac. I believe it's on 3DS.
It is on. That's how I'm playing through it.
Is it on Vita? I forget if it's a Vita.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It is maybe my favorite game from last year.
It's pretty good.
It's so incredible.
Yeah.
It is so whole. Like it is a perfect game, and it is. It weirdly enough kind of draws more Souls inspirations than this game does, and is also a more unqualified recommendation for me. Like everyone in the world should play Shovel Knight.
Yep.
Like I can't think of anyone who's not going to like Shovel Knight. It's so goddamn good.
This is like a Zelda tribute episode because this is Shovel Knight's Zelda 2.
Yeah, and Lords of the Fallen is just like Skyward Sword. No, that's not true. I actually like Lords of the Fallen. It sounds like I'm talking shit about it.
I'm excited to play it too.
Yeah, I like that game. But out of these games that we're doing, it is definitely the odd man out. But it fits in better with the actual rest of the series. So go figure. So Lords of the Fallen, and then we're doing an episode on Scholar of the First Sin. We will have the new lore and we will have the new NPC.
we will not have the new enemy placement.
It's weird. So I don't think we will. It's not in the patch notes, but like I also read something somewhere that made me think that we would with that too. So I don't know for sure about that.
We're gonna know more in like the next couple weeks.
I'm gonna know way more in less than a week.
Right.
And we'll be able to we'll report. But I want the new enemy placement stuff. It's going to be kind of like a split down the middle thing where we're going to be able to do our Scholar of the First Sin episode that talks about the lore and stuff. And then we're going to end up having to do an update episode partway through Bloodborne to talk about enemy placement. And that's fine.
If that is indeed the case.
If that ends up being the case, then that's what we'll end up doing. And that's fine. That's better than doing a one little look back after we've more or less handled Scholar. Feels better to me than just like literally having to do a huge mega blowout in the middle of Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Like we can do that as a special, wherever like the Drangleic Castle or Anor Londo is in Bloodborne, when we start filtering in special episodes, we can do a Dark Souls, a look back.
Yeah. It'll be, it'll be Drangleic Castle because Bloodborne takes place in Drangleic.
Oh shit! There we go. The
evidence is there, guys.
Yeah, it takes place there, and also Solaire is Prince Bloodborne.
Yeah, he's a werewolf now.
Yeah,
and he wants all your blood. He just wants to borrow it, though. Give it right back.
Yeah, praise the blood. And then after that, we're talking about Bloodborne, and we'll have specifics about that, and and everything as that approaches.
I need to put in for time off work.
Yeah, and I need to figure out my schedule and get a PS4 and and start lining up guests.
Yeah.
So on that note, if there are people, I mentioned this on Facebook, but I know a lot of people who listen to the show aren't on Facebook. If there are guests you really liked from the last couple seasons or people you'd like to see on the show, let me know. Pop on Facebook or shoot us a contact message, and I will do my best to get them. And then just be heading people off. Like I've tried to get Vadi a couple times. Maybe maybe fourth game will be a charm, and I'll be able to do it. So,
cool. And if there's a distinct reason why you're able to get a PS4, and why I was able to get a PS4 for Bloodborne, and that was the Patreon.
Yeah. So if you go, people who have decided to give us a couple bucks a month on patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv are enabling us to do the show without immense personal cost to us.
Right.
We're not holding the show hostage. We would have gotten Bloodborne anyway because this is a show about the Souls games and duh. But it helps a lot that people are willing to kind of help finance us because we, for the most part, just do this because we love doing it. And, it is nice. It would be an undue financial difficulty for me, at least right now in my life, to buy a PS4 and was not planning to otherwise.
Right.
So if you want to be as kind and generous as those people, head on over to patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. If you cannot, NBD, But why not try rating and reviewing the show on iTunes or telling a friend about it?
Mm-hmm. Both of those things make a huge difference. This show has an incredibly bizarre curve of listeners because each episode is somewhat evergreen, but at the beginning of a season it spikes and then it drops off, and then there's just a huge backlog download. I've been analyzing the numbers, Gary.
Yeah. And it's because people play along with the show, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you know somebody who's getting into the show or getting into the games, just maybe send them a little link.
Kick them our way.
A little winky link.
Yeah. And there's always facebook.com/bonfireside chat if you want to get in on that action. And we have that merch survey running until January 31st at midnight.
Yes, and it cuts off. Then it is a strict cutoff, and we don't give a shit about what you think of shirts. At that point, you had your chance.
If you have ideas about merch and if you have opinions on that, always use the contact form. This is just a formalized way for us to gather. Again, we don't harvest your information at all. If you want to find that is at Duckfeed.tv/merch survey 2015. It is a great help to us.
Indeed. And until next time, what should they do?
They should praise the dot.
Praise the dot.
Dot Bassa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
www.bassa.com